So on Hanukkah, one of the most famous questions that is asked with regards to Hanukkah is the question of the Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef asked a question. And the question is, in the language of Chazal, in the language of the sages that we say in the Gemara and Shabbos, in the Brisa, that they found a jug of oil, one particular jug of oil that was sealed with the seal of the high priest, with the Kohen Gadol. Kavi Yasher says this is the oil that they anointed kings and priests. They found this one jug of oil that would potentially last for one night, as it was prepared for the longest night of the winter. And instead of lasting for one night, it lasted for 8 nights. And that's the story of Hanukkah. We celebrate the 8 nights of Hanukkah corresponding to the 8 days of the miracle. So the question is, it's not 8 days of miracle. There's only 7 days of miracle, because if they had enough oil to last for one night, then it's a 7-day miracle, not an 8-day miracle. So why 8 days? This is the question. This is the famous question that's asked by the Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef himself gives a few answers. So one answer is, for example, that they divided when they immediately found this jug of oil that wouldn't able to last for one night. Incidentally, there's a version in the Shiltas that says that it wouldn't even last for one night. But assuming that the more known version is that it would have lasted for one night, they realized that they wouldn't able to produce fresh, pure oil for another 7 days, 8 days. So they divided, to begin with, they divided the oil into eighths, and every night they lit an eighth. But then the question of that is that the mitzvah, generally in the Beis Hamikdash, is to do everything in its fullest amount, telemidah, so you have to give its full amount. So you can't fill up a jug, you can't fill up the menorah, not complete. So then another answer is that every night it lit. They filled it up completely the first night, but every night only an eighth of the oil was burnt. So that means that it was miraculous oil, it was magical oil. That's also a question, because the Torah says you have to have shem and zayis, you have to have olive oil, which is natural oil. So much so that the Gemara talks about, the sages talk about a question if they found wheat. The Gemara Menachos talks about if there's wheat that was flown in, that was brought through a wind, whether it's magical wheat that came from heaven, metaphorically, or it was wheat that was pushed from another side, from another direction, another place was lifted up and brought down. So certainly there's an idea that it has to be natural. So if it's miraculous oil, then it's not natural. And there's many answers to this question. Maybe the first night was a celebration for the war, that they were victorious, and the 7 days for the miracles of the oil. In fact, there's a sefer, there's a book, it's called Ner L'Mea, A Candle to 100, which explains over 100 answers that was given. And the truth is, many answers given throughout the ages to this famous question. And sometimes when you find a question that's answered with various different answers, and certainly tens of answers, hundreds of answers, this is actually a sign, an indication that on a very deep level, there is no answer to this question. If it's a straightforward question and there's a simple answer, then that's the answer. But if there's many answers, then maybe none of them are the answers, or none of them are the correct answer or the full answer. Which means on a more deeper level, we'll try to understand this, is that Hanukkah is really connected to a place of question. What that means exactly, we'll explain soon, but it's connected to a particular idea of a question, a light, an oyer, a light, a divine light that penetrates and is revealed even in the place of a question, as we'll explain. In general, this is going to be connected with the oyer ganas, the hidden light that was revealed in the beginning of creation, the day one of creation. When Hashem said, let there be light, there was a light that was revealed, and this light was eventually concealed, and we'll see where that light becomes revealed. An answer that is given, which will help us understand what Hanukkah is, an answer that's given by the Rebbe and Kutasichas, the Lubavitch Rebbe, is that the miracle of, and this is the most clean answer, is that the miracle was not a miracle in the oil itself, which then becomes problematic for various reasons. And there's a lot of conversation about this, and Reb Chaim on this. And the answer is that it was not in the oil itself, but the miracle was in the flame, in the light itself. That the light was a very particular light, and this light did not consume. Where do we find a light, a fire that does not consume? That is the light that we find by the story of the sneh, the burning bush. Moshe Rabbeinu sees that he stops to pause to see this great wonder, the wonder where there's a flame that's burning in this thorn bush, this sneh, and the sneh and the sneh and the thorn bush is not being consumed. This is something that he observes, and he stops to see this, and he's revealed to him this light. What is this type of light? This is a light that exists without the consumption of something else. The Zohar actually explains, in a famous piece in the Zohar explains that every candle, every flame, in fact, has at least 2, there's 3, there's 4, there's even 5 levels. But the first simple 2 levels of a flame is that there's a part of the flame that's touching the wick. That's connected to the psila, connected to the wick. That part of the flame, which is the red and the blue and the colorings of the flame that changes, that is the part of the flame that in order for it to exist, it needs to consume something else. That's one type of fire that the Zohar calls a lower fire, or tichla, a fire that consumes and destroys. And then there's a higher fire. When you look at a flame, you see that there's a glow, so to speak, on top of the flame itself, over the flame, like a white halo, that's a glow. And the Zohar says that flame is not attached to wick, therefore it's not also attached to the oil itself, or whatever it's consuming. And what that represents is a higher type of fire, a fire that in order for it to exist does not need to consume something else. That is the fire that the Zohar also explains in other places. In the beginning of Shmos, the Zohar says that that's the fire that's connected to the Aragon, as the hidden light. When the Torah speaks about the beginning of creation, the Torah speaks about the creation of light, or the Torah says the word or 5 times. Rakia 5 times, the Torah speaks of something in symbolic of 5. And the idea of 5 corresponds to the 5 times the word sneh, the thorn bush, appears in the story of Moshe encountering the thorn bush. And this represents that at the sneh, what did Moshe experience? Moshe experienced the light, a fire, a flame, a fire of God, a fire of Hashem that did not consume, an eish, a fire that did not consume. And that is the same light, that light that was revealed, that higher flame, that higher fire that was revealed to Moshe at the burning bush. That's the exact fire that Klal Yisrael, the people of Israel, experienced in the story of Hanukkah. In the story of Hanukkah, where there was a story where the oil that would last theoretically for 1 day lasted for 8 days. Why? Because it was a revealing of a light that does not consume, and that was revealed for 8 days. This is the answer. Let's try to unpack this answer a little bit and understand it within the greater context of what Hanukkah is. How is it related to Hanukkah? What is the connection between the light that was revealed by the sneh, by the burning bush? What is its connection to Hanukkah itself? Like, what's the connection? Why particularly that light is revealed in the story of Hanukkah? And in general, we have to think about Hanukkah. When we think about Hanukkah, the story of the miracles, that it was established for days of praise and thanksgiving because of the story of the oil that lasted for 8 days. This itself is also quite interesting and puzzling because we know that, first of all, we know that there were 10 miracles, Mishnah says in Avos, and that there were 10 miracles that happened in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, in the temple. There's actually machlokes Rishonim. Okay, the most Rishonim, Rashi tries to say that it was only in the time of the first Beis Hamikdash, but clearly there was also miracles in the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, certain Midrashim, and the Gemara speaks about Shimon HaTzadik, time of Shimon HaTzadik, there were certain miracles that happened. So why make a big deal about this miracle that happened, that the oil lasted for 8 days? So who cares? So I mean, it's an interesting story, and it's an interesting part of our history that something miraculous happened. But why particularly this event was such an important event in history that it was established forever? Not only for today, but even for the future. Even La'aseh Lavin, this is established. Hanukkah will be an eternal holiday forever, like Mishlei says, that we celebrate the idea of Hanukkah, this miracle. Why particularly this miracle is such an important miracle that it's celebrated for all time? This is similar to the question, whenever we celebrate a particular miracle, why this miracle? For example, when we talk about Sukkot, that Sukkot represents the time that we celebrate the miracle of the Ananei HaKavod. If we say that it means symbolically clouds of glory, not the booths themselves, then the question is, why that miracle? When we left Egypt, we celebrate the miracle of the clouds of glory, like the Bachas and other places mask. Why don't we celebrate the well of Miriam? Or why don't we celebrate the Mun? So this is the same question, like, what is this event that happened that is so important that the oil lasted for 8 days? And because of that, it's important that we celebrate for 8 days of celebration, a special holiday, Hanukkah. So to understand this, we have to understand a little bit what was going on at that time period. So Hanukkah, the story of Hanukkah happens in the midpoint in 207, the years of the second Beis Hamikdash, the second temple. The second Beis Hamikdash is very interesting in contrast to the first Beis Hamikdash. The first Beis Hamikdash, the first temple, which was gathered, the material by David, and then was built by King Solomon, was done in the time of the prophets, times of the Nevi'im. The second Beis Hamikdash, and also in the time of Tanakh, the time when the Torah, or the Nevi'im, the prophets, that existed. The second Beis Hamikdash was built by people. It was the Seif HaNevuah. It was the end of the Beis Hamikdash, ends of the times of prophecy. It was Seif HaNevuah, Chagas Chayim Malach, at the end of the prophecy. And the end of the completion of Torah Shebiksav, of the canonical text. Torah Shebiksav, the books of prophecy, were coming to a close. In fact, the Chazal speak about the story of Purim, that it's a Yalash HaShachar, that Seif Kolonism is the end of all the miracles. The Gemara says, why is it called the end of all the miracles? Purim, because the story of Purim is the final, is written in Ksuvim, written in the final writings of the Torah, which means that it's still part of the canonical text, part of the Chavdal Kisvei HaKodesh, the 24 sacred text, that's the end. That's the story of Purim. Hanukkah, the story of Hanukkah begins, is a story where it's the end of prophecy. It's the beginning of the rise of the revealing of Torah Shebaal Peh, particularly Torah Shebaal Peh, the oral traditions, beginning of the rise of the Mishnah. It's the beginning of the rise of the sages, which means the Torah Shebaal Peh, the oral tradition. The difference between Torah Shebiksav and Torah Shebaal Peh, Torah Shebiksav, the written Torah, the Torah that's revealed through prophecy, is a transmission from above to below, which means that the person surrenders, the prophet surrenders, and the prophecy reveals. When the people want to know a particular law and they come to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, what should we do about this particular thing, about inheritance issue? Moshe says that stand here and I'll let me hear what Hashem has to say, which means it's prophecy. The revelation is from top down. What happens now with the beginning of Torah Shebaal Peh, the oral tradition, now begins a process where it's the dialogue, instead of Hashem dialoguing to us, through us, in prophecy, now we're dialing back in dialogue to Hashem. We're talking back to Hashem. So that's the relationship goes from top down to bottom up. That is Torah Shebaal. That is Torah Shebaal. That is the oral tradition. That means that the Torah is going to reveal through our seichel, through our intelligence. When it speaks about in the beginning of creation that there was a creation of the Oragonovs, of this primordial light, this hidden light. So the Medrash and the Baal Shem Tov brings us down that where was this light nignaz? Then it was concealed. This light was concealed after the first day of creation, which in the first day of creation of it was concealed. Where was this concealed? It was concealed particularly in the Torah, but more specifically in Torah Shebaal Peh, in the oral tradition. There were 36 hours that Adam Arishon, Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, the primordial beings, were bathed in this light of Oragonos in the beginning of the story of their creation, before the Chet Eitz Hadas, before the sin of eating from the tree of knowledge, which is they were created. There was 12 hours on Friday and the 24 hours of Shabbos. That night, it was holy light. It was light of the Oragonos, of the hidden light, before it was hidden. So the 36 hours that Adam and Eve were bathed, Adam and Eve were bathed in this light, correspond. This light was then drawn down and revealed and concealed within the 36, in the Torah Shebaal Peh, in the Torah Shebaal Peh, and in Torah Shebaal Peh, in the oral tradition, specifically in the 36 tractates of Shas, of the Talmud, which means that the light of the Oragonos was revealed in Torah Shebaal Peh, particularly in the Talmud Bavli, in the Babylonian Talmud. Bavel generally, Chazal speak about Bavel as called a makam ha'choshecha, a place of darkness, that the thoughts are through darkness. The Gemara says that mamachshakim ha'shivani, that there is a machshakim in a place of darkness. That's Talmud Bavli. Gemara says inside, which is the place of darkness. That's the Babylonian Talmud. Bavel comes from a bilbul, a Bavel mixed up, which means this lack of clarity. The nation that walks in darkness and sees a great light. So the Medrash Tanchuma in Noach says that refers to Talmud Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud, which means that it's the Makam HaChosher. It's the light that penetrates in the place of darkness. Now Hanukkah, let's get back to Hanukkah, which incidentally, the 36 hours, with the 36 tractates is also incidentally, that is not incidentally, but it's also the 36 lights the cumulative lights, candles or flames that we light throughout Hanukkah. So 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 + 5 + 6 + 7 + 8 is 36. So the 36 lights that we kindle on Hanukkah correspond to the 36 hours that Adam and Chava were bathed in the primordial light of Or HaGanuz, which was concealed within the 36 tractates of the Talmud. What is it saying? What is it so important? And why is Hanukkah so important? Precisely because this reason. Because in the times of Tanakh, in the times of the Nevi'im, in the times of the prophecy, when there was clear prophecy, there was clear direction, it was clear Hasharas HaShekhinah, it was clear the presence of the Shekhinah was present with Klal Yisrael in the Beis HaMikdash, in the temple, and throughout all Israel, where Klal Yisrael was. Then it was clear that the Shekhinah was with us. Once it began the place of Choshev, once there was a canonization of the Torah, and the Torah was already closed, so to speak. The Torah Shebeksav, the revealing of the Torah Shebeksav, of the written Torah, was closed. And you were in the middle of the second Beis HaMikdash time, which is a time already Mamata L'mayla, from below to above. The story of Hanukkah, and the reason why it's becomes such an important story, is because it was a confirmation. The story of Hanukkah was a confirmation that it was a confirmation on the entire building of the second Beis HaMikdash, that there was Hasharas HaShekhinah, that the Shekhinah was present on that, and that's why it was a chinuch. It was an inauguration. Hanukkah comes in the idea of an inauguration of the Mizbeach, or in the Beis HaMikdash. It was an inauguration, a confirmation that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Hashem's presence is resting in this place. And not only that Hashem's presence is resting in this place, that Hashem's presence is resting with us, because this is a top-down relationship in Torah Sheba'al Peh. And even the story of the victory of Hanukkah. The victory of Hanukkah is when a few people together, not through prophecy, decided to go do battle with the Assyrian Greeks, which is something that's coming through their own intelligence, through their own understanding of life. And the story of Hanukkah, the revealing of the miracle of the 8 days, was the revealing of this Or HaGanuz, this hidden light that was revealed, that Hashem says, that Hashem revealed to us that the Shekhinah's light is present with us in this story, in our lives, in the place of Galus, in the place of darkness, in the place of Mamata L'mayla, from below to above. The Rambam in Hilchos Chanukah, the Rambam, when he talks about the mitzvah of Chanukah and the importance of lighting of the candles, the Rambam says that mitzvah Chanukah chaviv ad ma'od. The mitzvah of Chanukah is very chaviv, is very precious. It's a very precious mitzvah. Tosfos also in Sukkah Vav, Tosfos asks a question. It says, the Gemara talks about the Zman, about the bracha that you have to make of Shechiyonu, and then the Gemara says that on Chanukah you also have to make a bracha, a special blessing, when you see the menorah. There's a birchas haroy, there's a bracha that you have to see. When you see the menorah, you should make a blessing. If you're not going to light, that's already an argument among the poskim. If you're not going to light later on, if you know that it's impossible for you to light a menorah, and if you see the menorah and it's late at night, then you're not going to light a menorah, then you should just make the birchas haroy. Some say maybe even if you don't, even if you're going to light, but when you light, even when you light at home, wherever you light, you also have to make a birchas haroy. Not only you make a bracha on the blessing for lighting the candles, which is a regular bracha, a blessing, but you also make a specific blessing for seeing the candle. For birchas haroy, so Tosfos asks the question: how come we don't find this idea of making a blessing and seeing a mitzvah with any other mitzvah? There's no mitzvah of when you see the sukkah, or you see the lulav, you should make a bracha on the seeing of the lulav. Birchas haroy. Or you see the sukkah, which reminds you of Nana Kavod, the Klal Zagor, you should make a bracha, a blessing for seeing the Nana. You don't do that. Only by Hanukkah, says Tosfos. Why? One, the first reason that Tosfos gives, and that's the Ikar reason, that's the main reason Tosfos says, is because Chavivus Anes, that there's Chavivus, there's a preciousness to this miracle. So Hanukkah is connected with something that's very precious, with a preciousness, with Chavivus. This is the famous also answer that Rabbi Kiva asked, Rabbi Kiva and Yeshua talk about this question of why is it that really technically they could have lit the menorah even if they're impure with impure oil, because when it's a public issue, then it's pushed aside. But it's chavivas. Hashem wants to show chavivas. It's preciousness that I want you to do it in the correct way. Therefore, I'm going to perform this miracle for you. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, the Rashbi says at the end of the Gemara Megillah, there's a quote from the Rashbi. In the tract of Megillah Chavtas Aleph, the Gemara, the Rashbi says, Chaviv Yisrael, that precious is Israel. Wherever they go, the Shekhinah is with them. So we see the chavivus, the preciousness is that it's a mitzvah chaviva, it's a chavivus anes, it's precious mitzvah, it's a preciousness, precious miracle. What's the preciousness is? The preciousness, the chavivus is that Hashem says the Shekhinah will be with you and present with you even in the place of exile. That is the story of Hanukkah. The story of Hanukkah is the revealing that even in the place where it's the beginning of exile, and the second base of English doesn't have the same light that was revealed, doesn't have the Or V'Tumim, and doesn't have the Ar, and doesn't have the same light that was revealed in the first base of English, which was a light that came down Mamayla Lamata from above, from below. Here in the place where below to above, even in this place, even here, even in the place of the darkness, Hashem says, I'm going to rest with you and be with you. I'm going to show you that I'm there. That's why Hanukkah becomes such an important Yom Tov. In the story of the Sneh, and the story of the burning bush, when Moshe asks, what's the name that's revealed by the Sneh? What's the name I should tell Klal Yisrael that you will be redeemed with? Hashem says, Eka Asher Eka, I will be who I will be, or I am who I am. The more I will be. Rashi brings down Chazal. And what does it mean? What does this name Eka? Aleph, Hey, Yud, and Hey. What is this name? What is the sacred name of Hashem? Which means that I'm with them now in their exile. I will be with them in the future exile. This is the name that has to be revealed. Which means that what was revealed to Moshe at the Sneh, at the burning bush? The burning bush was a paradoxical experience, because normally fire consumes. That's number one. And here the fire was not consuming the bush. But here, in addition to that, here was a fire of the presence of the Shekhinah of life. The presence of the Shekhinah, which is life and giving and furthering. And where was this light revealed? In the Sneh, in the thorny bush. But the thorny bush did not become not a non-thorny bush. It didn't become a bush of flowers. It still remained a thorny bush. Like Chazal says, the Medrash says, it's M'bakim HaTzimtzum. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mitzamtzum. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem was contracted itself into the place of the Sneh, the place of the thorny bush. And the thorny bush remains a place of thorns, and it's still prickly. And in there is revealed the name of Eka. Because what is the name Aleph Hey Yud Hey? What is this name of Eka? I will be. This is the name that the Sha'ara speaks about this, whether it's his name of Keser or name of Bina, but if it's the idea of Keser, it's a nice afachim. It's something that contains opposite. It's a revealing of the light of the Shekhinah in the place of the exile. The exile is still exile. And Kol Makom Shgal Shekhinah, which even the place where they're in exile, the Shekhinah is present with them. But it doesn't take away the fact that it's an exile. It's still harsh, and it's still hard, and it's still difficult. It's still a place of darkness, and the recognition that Hashem is there, that Shem Eka is there, that the name of Hashem is there in the place of the exile. That's why when Chazal say, the sages say that the next year, Lashon Acheres Kavum B'Halal B'Eidah, the next year they established the days of Hanukkah, B'Halal, with singing Halal, and Hoidah, with giving praise, thanksgiving and praise. Praise, Halal, is numerically is 65, which is the name of Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yud, Adnai, which is the name of Hashem that represents the Din, the Aleph and the Din, the name of Hashem in the place of Din, a place of constriction. And Hoidah, the word Hoidah, which is to be grateful, is numerically is 21. And 21 is the numeric value of Shem the name of the Shem Eka, which is the name of Aleph Hey Yud Hey, which is the quality of Odah, the quality of Hanukkah is to give, is to be grateful. And not only to be grateful, like the Rambam speaks about, this idea of gratefulness is reflected not only in a posture of being of saying being grateful, but in the expression of lighting the menorah. It is itself also part of gratitude. And the idea of gratitude is not only to speak gratitude and to an act of gratitude, but to be in a posture of gratitude, to be in a posture of tremendous gratitude. This is what the oil of Hanukkah, this is the light of Hanukkah, is that it's a light. It's the name of Hashem, the name Shem Eka, even in the place where there's a shaila, there's a question. Like we said before, this is a question that was asked by the Beis Yosef, why we celebrate for 8 days, and a tremendous amount of answers that was given to this question. And the very deep answer is that it's Hanukkah is the light that reveals itself in the place of the question. The question is still a question. Question, the Bnei Yissaschar speaks about in Talmud Zanav, that the question, the idea of a question, is a type of alienation. A question is a place of exile, is a place of estrangement, and that is the light that's revealed in Hanukkah. Even in the place of Golus, even in the place of exile, there's the name of Hashem, and that's why Hanukkah becomes an essential, a tremendously essential Yom Tov holiday, because it represents us, Klal Yisrael, in the time of Golus. That the recognition that Hashem's presence is with us, that the name Eka is with us, that the Shekhinah's presence is with us, and that's why it becomes the most essential holiday, particularly in times of exile. And that's why symbolically, the symbol of a Jew, the symbol that Jews always had as a symbolic image, was, if they used an image, and obviously this is complicated to use an image, but if they wanted to symbolize that here was, let's say, for example, a Jew that was buried, if you look at the catacombs in Rome, you'll see that it was not a Magen David. This is a relatively more modern, last few hundred years, maybe 500 years, where this was revealed as the Magen David, as a seal of David, as a symbol of a symbolic of a Jew. But the earlier symbol of Jew, and that was done in all shuls, etc. It was always a menorah. The menorah, because the menorah, the candelabra, which is Hanukkah, represents Hashem's presence, the light of Hashem's presence that exists in the place of darkness, in the place of Choshech, in the place of exile. The awareness that even though we're in exile and we're not in a state of freedom, and we're not in a state of world redemption, certainly on a global level, that the world is not in a complete redemptive state, and Klal Yisrael sometimes feels oppressed or feels threatened, or any type of persecution, whether it's real or it's imaginative. But the deeper understanding of Hanukkah, and therefore it becomes such a precious holiday, it's chavivim, it's precious, is we call kol makom shugol l'shchinei, the recognition that Hashem is with us. And on a personal level, not only in a collective level, we always have to remember collectively that Hashem is always with us. The Shekhinah is always with us. The Shekhinah is also going through the suffering and the pain that we're experiencing with us. And we're never alone. We're never alone. We're never alone collectively, and we're never alone individually. It's not possible for a person to be alone. This is the story of Hanukkah. This is the oil of Hanukkah. This is the light of Hanukkah that penetrates into such a deep way. And when we recognize that, and we live with this haidah, with this recognition of the awareness of Hashem's presence with us, and all time, we're always in a posture of gratitude. Maybe we're not we're not grateful for every situation that we're in. Maybe not yet, but certainly we'll be grateful in every situation we are in. And this is the light of Hanukkah. You should have a wonderful, beautiful, lichtige Hanukkah.